The headlines that shocked millions. The headlines hit Americans like a sudden storm. Everywhere you look, on television, online, and even in community conversations, there are alarming warnings shouting that Social Security is facing massive cuts. For many seniors, these messages create real fear. After all, Social Security isn't a luxury. It's the monthly lifeline that pays for groceries, life-saving medication, rent, and utilities. It's the benefit that older Americans earned, worked for, and paid into over an entire lifetime. So when you see phrases like government exposed or huge cuts are coming, your heart naturally races. You may start worrying about your next payment, about how you'll afford basic needs, or how your family members who depend on Social Security will cope. These feelings are valid, and you're not alone. Millions of Americans, especially older adults, have been shaken by these headlines. But here's the important truth that's often missing from the dramatic news alerts. Despite all the noise, your Social Security check is not being cut right now. Retirees are still receiving their full scheduled benefits. There is no immediate reduction coming next month, and seniors relying on Social Security for daily expenses are not suddenly losing 20 or 30% of their income. However, even though these cuts aren't happening today, the warnings are not entirely false. They point to a very real crisis that is approaching, one that grows more urgent every year. What's happening is not about today's check, but about the future of Social Security as a whole. Understanding what's really happening. Now that we've cleared up the fear surrounding immediate cuts, it's time to look closely at what the headlines are actually referring to. The truth is more nuanced, but it's also serious. The Social Security system is facing long-term financial pressure that cannot be ignored. Even though your check is safe today, the structure behind those payments is under growing strain. For decades, Social Security operated with a strong trust fund. Every paycheck you ever received had Social Security taxes deducted, and for many years, more money was going into the system than coming out. That surplus created a safety cushion, a reserve meant to support retirees for generations. But demographic changes have been slowly reshaping this balance, and those changes are now reaching a critical point. Americans are living longer than ever before. That is a blessing for families, but it also means retirees collect benefits for more years than the original system expected. At the same time, birth rates in the United States have declined. This means there are fewer workers paying into the system to support each retiree. Decades ago, there were 5 workers contributing for every person receiving benefits. Today, that number is closer to just under 3, and it continues to fall. This shift doesn't cause an immediate disaster, but over time it erodes the stability of the trust fund. And according to the most recent projections, Social Security's primary retirement trust fund is expected to run out of reserves around 2032 or 2033. When that happens, the system won't disappear, but it will only be able to pay what it collects in real time. That is where the concern truly begins. What trust fund depletion really means. When people hear the words trust fund depletion, it often sounds like Social Security is going to disappear entirely. But that's not what it means. Even if the trust fund runs out around 2032 or 2033, Social Security will still exist and checks will still be sent out every month. The system doesn't shut down. It simply becomes limited to the money it collects from current workers through payroll taxes. However, here is the alarming part. Based on current projections, those payroll taxes will only cover about 76% of scheduled benefits. That means if nothing changes, no reforms, no adjustments, no new policies, then an automatic cut of around 24% would hit all beneficiaries, and this reduction would happen across the board. To understand how serious a 24% cut is, imagine planning your retirement around a certain income only to have nearly 1/4 of it vanish. This isn't a small trim or a minor rounding error. It is a major reduction that affects real lives and daily survival. Let's put this into a real-world example. Picture a typical couple who worked their entire lives, paid into Social Security with every paycheck, and expect to receive around $75,000 a year in combined benefits when they retire. If the trust fund is depleted and Congress takes no action, that couple would lose roughly $18,000 a year. $18,000 gone. That's food, medication, utilities, home maintenance, transportation, and security. For many seniors, a cut like that isn't just inconvenient. It's life-changing. This is why experts, advocates, and economists are sounding the alarm, not because of what's happening today, but because of what's coming if no action is taken. The rising challenges for disability programs. While most of the headlines focus on retirement benefits, There is another critical part of Social Security facing its own growing challenges: disability programs. These include Social Security Disability Insurance, SSDI, VA Supplemental Security Income, SSI. And while these programs are separate from the retirement fund, they are not immune to pressures. In recent years, regulatory proposals have surfaced that would tighten eligibility standards for disability benefits, particularly affecting older workers who apply due to declining health. These changes do not reduce the monthly benefit amounts for people already on disability. Instead, they make it more difficult for new applicants to qualify. For someone who has worked hard their entire life, who develops a serious medical condition, and who can no longer perform their job, this tightening of rules can feel devastating. If you would have qualified under the previous criteria but are denied under the new rules, it feels like a cut, because in your lived experience, it is. And this isn't the only issue. The Social Security Administration itself has been quietly shrinking. Budget constraints, staffing shortages, and office closures have created long delays in services. What used to take weeks now takes months. Phone lines stay busy for hours. Applications for disability benefits that once took 6 months now may require a year or more. For older Americans, these delays are not minor inconveniences. They can mean months without income, months without needed support, and months of uncertainty during the most vulnerable times of life. These problems may not show up as a reduction in your actual check, but they are cuts in service, and they directly affect millions of Americans who depend on Social Security to function effectively. Why the system is struggling today. To understand the challenges Social Security faces, we must look back at how the system was originally designed. When Social Security was created in the 1930s, the world looked very different. Life expectancy was much shorter, and most people weren't expected to spend 20 or 30 years in retirement. Workers paid into the system for their entire careers and then collected benefits for a relatively limited time. But over the decades, things have changed dramatically. Thanks to advances in medicine, nutrition, and healthcare, Americans are living longer, an incredible achievement for society, but a major financial challenge for a program built around a completely different demographic reality. At the same time, birth rates have steadily declined. Families today have fewer children than they did in previous generations. This means fewer workers paying into the system, even as more people draw benefits and draw them for longer periods of time. In 1960, there were more than 5 workers contributing for every retiree receiving benefits. Today, that number has fallen to fewer than 3 workers per beneficiary, and projections show that this ratio will continue shrinking in the coming decades. This creates a perfect storm: more money going out, less money coming in, and fewer young workers to support a rapidly growing retired population. It's not a political problem, it's a mathematical one. Social Security wasn't built for this new reality, and unless changes are made, the imbalance will continue to erode the trust fund and push the system closer to automatic cuts that no one wants to see happen. The limited options facing Congress. When the government is confronted with a financial imbalance as large as the one facing Social Security, there are only a handful of available solutions. None of them are easy, none of them are popular, and every option comes with trade-offs that affect millions of Americans, especially seniors who depend on their monthly checks. One option is raising payroll taxes. This would require workers and employers to contribute more from each paycheck to strengthen the trust fund. While this could help stabilize the system, it places a greater burden on today's workforce, many of whom are already struggling with rising costs. Another option is raising the retirement age. Because people are living longer, some lawmakers argue that the age for receiving full benefits should increase. But this would force people, especially those in physically demanding jobs, to work more years before claiming benefits, and it could hit lower-income workers the hardest. Congress could also modify benefit formulas, reducing the amount future retirees receive, or they could means test benefits, reducing or eliminating payments for wealthier retirees while preserving full benefits for low-income seniors. Finally, they could pursue a combination of all these strategies. This is considered the most realistic approach, but also the most politically challenging, because it creates winners and losers across different income groups and generations. These options have been discussed for decades, yet Congress has taken little action. Why? Because Social Security is often described as the third rail of American politics. Touch it and you get burned. No lawmaker wants to be responsible for upsetting seniors who vote in high numbers and fiercely protect their earned benefits. But delaying action only makes the eventual fixes more painful. A nation divided on Social Security's future. One of the biggest reasons Social Security reform has stalled for so long is the sharp divide between different generations of Americans. Seniors and near retirees see Social Security as a promise, something they paid into every single paycheck and fully expect to receive. To them, it's not a government gift, it's earned, it's deserved, and any reduction feels like a broken commitment. Younger workers, however, often see the program very differently. Many fear that by the time they retire, Social Security will be depleted or dramatically reduced. Some even doubt whether it will exist at all. Because of that fear, they sometimes resent the payroll taxes taken from their paychecks, believing they are funding a system they may never benefit from. This generational tension creates a political deadlock. Any attempt to protect current seniors may require asking younger generations to pay more, and any attempt to fix the system for younger Americans may require limiting benefits for future retirees. No proposal pleases everyone. Meanwhile, the clock keeps ticking. Each year, Congress delays action, the financial gap widens, and the options for a smooth solution shrink. What could have been addressed with small adjustments years ago now requires bigger, bolder changes. This isn't just a policy challenge, it's deeply personal. Families are caught in the middle. Adult children worry about their aging parents' stability, even as they worry about their own financial futures. The fear, frustration, and uncertainty touch nearly every household in America. Until leaders confront this reality with courage and clarity, Social Security remains a promise under pressure, inching closer to a moment when automatic cuts become unavoidable. Understanding the different types of cuts. When people hear the word cuts, they often imagine their current Social Security check being reduced immediately. But not all cuts are the same, and not all affect people the same way. To truly understand the crisis ahead, it's important to recognize the different kinds of changes that could occur and who they would impact. First, there are benefit reductions for current retirees. These are the most painful and the most noticeable. If the trust fund runs out and Congress does nothing, an automatic 24% cut would hit everyone already receiving benefits. This would be felt instantly and would be especially devastating for seniors with limited savings who rely almost entirely on Social Security. Then, there are eligibility changes, adjustments to the rules that decide who can qualify for disability benefits or early retirement. These changes don't affect those already receiving payments, but they do make it harder for future applicants. If you would have qualified under today's rules but are denied under new, stricter criteria, that feels like a cut to you personally. Another type of change is raising the retirement age. This doesn't reduce benefits for today's seniors, but it does affect younger generations. People in their 40s or 50s may have to work longer than expected before claiming full benefits, altering retirement plans that have been years in the making. Finally, increased payroll taxes would place a greater burden on today's workers, but would not reduce benefits for anyone currently receiving Social Security. Each form of reduction affects different groups, and each raises difficult questions about fairness, responsibility, and the shared sacrifices required to preserve the program for the future. How Americans can protect their financial future. With so many uncertainties surrounding Social Security's long-term stability, many Americans, especially seniors and near retirees, are wondering what they can do to protect themselves and their families. While no one can control government policy decisions, there are practical steps individuals can take to strengthen their financial security. First, it's important not to rely exclusively on Social Security for retirement income. For decades, financial professionals have encouraged people to think of retirement as a three-legged stool: Social Security, employer-sponsored retirement plans like 401ks, and personal savings. Social Security was never intended to serve as the only source of income, and with potential reductions looming, diversifying income becomes even more critical. If you are still working, maximizing contributions to a 401k or IRA can make a significant difference in future stability. Even small increases today can grow substantially over time. For those closer to retirement, reviewing your claiming strategy is essential. Claiming early guarantees that you begin receiving benefits sooner, but also locks in a permanently lower payment. Waiting until full retirement age, or even beyond, can significantly increase your monthly check, but also carries the risk of claiming just before potential cuts. These decisions depend on health, family circumstances, and your tolerance for risk. Many people find it helpful to speak with a financial advisor who can model different scenarios tailored to your unique needs. The goal is not to replace Social Security, but to ensure that if reductions do occur in the future, you have other resources to maintain stability and dignity throughout retirement. The policy debates that could shape the future. While the trust fund's depletion date is approaching, Congress still has time to take meaningful action. Over the years, lawmakers from both political parties have introduced proposals aimed at protecting Social Security and preventing the 24% automatic reduction that would occur if the trust fund runs dry. However, every proposal comes with difficult choices. One of the most widely discussed ideas is raising or eliminating the payroll tax cap. Today, Social Security taxes apply only to the first roughly $160,000 of a worker's income. Income above that amount is not taxed for Social Security purposes. By raising or removing this cap, the system would collect more money from high earners, significantly strengthening the trust fund. Another proposal involves adjusting the benefit formula so that wealthier retirees receive smaller monthly payments while lower-income seniors, those who rely on Social Security the most, might actually receive more. Supporters argue this makes the program more equitable, while critics believe it shifts Social Security away from being an earned benefit. Some lawmakers also advocate for raising the full retirement age, reflecting increased life expectancy. But as many seniors point out, living longer doesn't always mean working longer, especially for Americans in physically demanding jobs. Other proposals combine several strategies, spreading responsibility across income groups and age brackets. These solutions may be the most effective, but also the most politically challenging. Despite the disagreements, one reality remains clear: action must be taken. The longer Congress waits, the harder and more painful the solutions become for everyone. Why fixing Social Security is so politically difficult. Even though nearly every American agrees that Social Security must be preserved, finding political agreement on how to fix it is extraordinarily difficult. The program has long been known as the third rail of American politics. In other words, touching it, making major changes, can be politically dangerous. Seniors, who vote in some of the highest numbers of any demographic group, are extremely protective of their earned benefits. They view Social Security not as charity, but as a contract, a promise built on decades of payroll contributions. Any proposal that seems to threaten those benefits is met with fierce resistance. Meanwhile, younger Americans have their own concerns. Many doubt the program will be there for them at all, leading to frustration and skepticism about paying into a system they believe may not support them in the future. Asking them to pay more in taxes or accept a higher retirement age is not an easy sell either. These competing pressures leave lawmakers trapped. Any proposal strong enough to solve the financial problems risks angering one group or another. And in a deeply divided political climate, elected officials often choose to postpone action rather than risk backlash. But postponing action does not make the problem go away. Instead, it forces future leaders and future generations to face an even larger challenge. What might have been solved with smaller adjustments 20 years ago now demands bigger, more urgent decisions. This political gridlock has allowed the Social Security crisis to inch closer and closer to a point where automatic cuts become unavoidable. And unless leaders are willing to confront difficult truths, time will run out. Planning ahead. What families should consider. Now, with so much uncertainty surrounding the future of Social Security, many Americans, especially older adults and their families, are beginning to ask difficult but necessary questions. What will retirement look like if benefits are reduced? How will aging parents be supported? And what should younger generations do now to prepare for potential changes in the years ahead? The most important step is awareness. While it's natural for people to avoid thinking about financial instability, ignoring the problem only makes families more vulnerable. Understanding the projected trust fund depletion and the possible policy changes allows you to make informed decisions. Families should begin having open conversations about expectations, resources, and responsibilities. If Social Security benefits were reduced by 20 to 25%, what would that mean for your household? Would parents need additional support? Would adult children need to adjust their own financial planning to help? These discussions are not easy, but they are crucial for long-term stability. For individuals nearing retirement, reviewing expenses, reducing debt, and exploring supplemental income sources can also create a cushion against future uncertainty. For younger workers, staying engaged with retirement accounts, whether employer-sponsored plans or individual IRAs, can provide significant protection over time. Most importantly, remember this: there is still time. Congress can act, solutions exist, the crisis is serious but not unstoppable. And the more informed and prepared families are, the better positioned they will be to navigate whatever changes the future brings. Being proactive today means greater security and peace of mind tomorrow. The urgent need for leadership and real solutions. As the financial challenges facing Social Security grow more serious, it becomes clearer every year that strong leadership is urgently needed. This isn't a problem that will fix itself. It isn't a problem that can be delayed indefinitely. And it certainly isn't a problem that only affects one group of Americans. Seniors, workers, families, caregivers, and future generations all have something at stake. For decades, policymakers have known that the trust fund would eventually face depletion. Reports, warnings, and projections have been issued year after year, yet meaningful action has been minimal. The political consequences of touching Social Security have kept many leaders from stepping forward with bold, long-term solutions. But as the depletion date approaches, the window for gentle solutions is closing. What might have required minor adjustments 20 years ago now demands more substantial reform. And if Congress waits too long, the system won't collapse, but automatic cuts will occur and millions of Americans will feel the impact instantly. This moment calls for honesty, courage, and cooperation, qualities that can be hard to find in today's political climate. But Social Security is bigger than politics. It is part of the American promise. Work hard, pay in, and when your working years end, dignity and stability will be there for you. The question now is whether leaders will make the difficult choices necessary to preserve that promise. Will they rise above partisan battles? Will they put long-term stability ahead of short-term political gain? Or will they allow the system to drift toward cuts that no American wants to experience? The future depends on the what and when of their decisions. The final message, preparing for tomorrow, while there's still time. As we reach the end of this discussion, the most important takeaway is this. The crisis is real, but there is still time to act. Social Security is not collapsing today. Benefits are not being slashed next month, but the system is moving toward a point where, without meaningful reform, automatic cuts will become unavoidable. And those cuts would affect nearly every American household. This is why now, not later, is the time for preparation. It's the time to understand the challenges, to stay informed, and to take proactive steps for your own financial well-being. Families should talk openly about expectations for the future. Workers should continue building savings wherever possible. Seniors should stay aware of legislative developments because changes will eventually come, and those changes will shape the future of retirement security in America. Most importantly, remember that you are not powerless. The public voice matters. Lawmakers pay attention when Americans speak clearly and consistently about what they need and expect from their leaders. Social Security exists today because previous generations demanded accountability, fairness, and protection for workers who earned their benefits. The same collective determination can preserve it for generations to come. So remain watchful, stay engaged, support policies that strengthen the system rather than weaken it, and plan wisely for the future, knowing that preparation provides confidence even in uncertain times. Social Security has been a pillar of American life for nearly 90 years. With the right actions and the courage to make tough decisions, it can remain strong for decades to come.